Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the next episode of HR Tech Chat. And with us here today, we have Mike Erlin, who's co-founder, and CEO of AbilityMap. And Mike has the esteemed distinction of being the very first repeat guest on HR Tech Chat. So uh, uh, remember that, Mike. This is a momentous occasion, and
I am truly honored. I am truly honored.
well, we're honored to have you. Really are. I mean, this has just been a great ongoing conversation that you and I have been having uh, around psychometrics, having the right instrument in place to understand what your employer culture is, who the best people are to hire, who's gonna be a good fit with your organization, and where hiring organizations go wrong, not because they're mean or they're just not paying attention. They're just going with what they think is right, and it's not necessarily. And one thing that I'd like to get into today as well is just the idea of how AI fits into all of this, because as we know, AI fits into everything. Um, and also, I would be remiss without saying that you join us today from down under. So technically, it is I'm speaking to the future right now. You folks are already in tomorrow, which is I always find that fascinating.
You know, I almost played it again. So Lee and I went for a hike this morning, and we go out to this beautiful point looking out over the mountains. And I almost brought my iPad and my cell phone, and I was going to call you from a cliff looking out over Australia. But I had to wait too long, and we're in fall, and it's bloody cold outside. So I'm doing it in the office instead.
That would have been really cool, but I'm glad you're warm, and that's the most important thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you want to just share with us a little, just again for anyone in our audience who hasn't seen the first episode, and I encourage them all to view it, and we'll include a link with the post about this once it goes live. But could you just share with us a little bit of what Ability Map does, and just sort of the history that led you to that? And it's a fascinating story.
Thank you. Yeah, I essentially what AbilityMap is a business productivity and workforce satisfaction uplift solution. Okay, that's essentially what we do, and we do it with SaaS, and it's all current and all that good stuff. The problem statement that our clients were facing, and a lot of people continue to face, was this persistent 1/3 problem, where about a third of any of our workforce just isn't in the right role, isn't producing the way that we need. And we're using all the cool tech that I've been, leading and selling and being involved with for 20 years. And my partner, my co-founder, a guy named Kevin Chandler, is sort of the hot dude down here in terms of organizational psychology, and he built $1.5 billion company. And he's been using psychometric assessment for 30 years and building this company, yet he saw it across his business. So the short version is we came in to figure out why all this cool technology and assessment hasn't been getting us a higher degree of productivity and people digging the jobs that they're in. That's what we set out to do. And what we found in principle was it's the transferable skills, the human capabilities, formerly called the soft skills, that we sort of glossed over the last few years, that are really making the difference in how humans work together. Surprise, right? And so we needed to figure out how to define those, both in a person, which has kind of been done bits and bobs, but more importantly, in the different environments that we're facing. Because if you look at COVID, we've had this massive shift. So before the call or the recording, we were talking about workforce productivity and effectiveness in a remote environment. Well, heck, that sort of slapped everyone awake and said, what the heck do I have in terms of workforce capability? What do I need? Where are the gaps, and how do I go after them? Does that help?
Yeah, it does, and it's huge. It goes.
It's huge.
I mean, that's probably an understatement. It goes back to some things that we've been writing about at 3Sixty Insights, and I've taken a keen interest in, is this idea that, as humans, we and I might be getting a little bit ahead here for our conversation, but I just want to kind of get this out there. We as humans, we have our own idea of what we think is a good match for a certain role, right? And
Yeah.
and it makes sense to us. It's not necessarily that we're, well, we are wrong. That's the thing. But there's no way that we would. I just don't think there's a way that we would know that we're wrong. So it's just these things that you go to, like credentials, or certain types of experience, or certain hard skills or whatever. Okay, I need a computer programmer. I need somebody who had background with Java, or something like that. I need somebody who's worked at a couple of the um, well-known technology companies developing software for them. These are the things I need. Want to make sure that they were, really good at coding and all this sort of stuff. And it's not that those are bad qualities, but those aren't necessarily, those might not necessarily be the qualities that that person needs to succeed at the given organization, which I
Let me, let me,
yeah.
yeah, let me give an example. Just yesterday, as a matter of fact, one of our advisors introduced us to an individual who heads up an Australian association, basically of technology network that is big down here. I don't want to say who it is, but the short version is we were speaking with this individual, and one of the big demands we have in Australia is cyber talent. Okay. And, like everyone's pretty jacked up about how well Australia is doing with COVID broadly. But when you're on an island and you shut the borders and you're not all that big a country, you don't have a lot of resources to pull from. So we're looking for cyber talent like hen's teeth down here, right? It's just, and that's some of the stuff that we're involved in, is identifying out of our population who has the inherent transferable skills to effectively work in the cyber environment, so education institutions, governments can start tapping those people on the shoulder and say, hey, you could do this. But separately, what it was really interesting, because this individual said last night, she said, Mike, we had this individual come in for a SOC role, and in the cyber sector, and she said this person was arguably the most qualified person our CISOs had ever seen in Australia, and probably competed with the top-notch talent in the United States. Okay. She said, we've never seen anything like it. Everybody in Australia would want someone with those, the level of qualification around those technical skills. And she said, the problem was, because we were talking about AbilityMap and applying it in their network, she said, the problem is the individual's human capabilities were terrible. I could not bring them into the organization because they would have just wrecked the organization. That was the clearest example of where somebody can have the best of the best of the best in the quals, the tech, the certs, all that component. But when it comes to fitting in an environment of working with other people, they're destructive. And so understanding that is critical to productivity as well as satisfaction, because that individual, if they came into the organization, it's not only probably not going to dig the job themselves, but think about what the impact's going to be on the other people.
Yeah, it's going to be pervasive. I mean, it's going to be just a huge impact.
Wrecking ball.
Yeah, wrecking ball. I was going detrimental. I was going to say, but I like your language much more. I mean, the thing about that I find particularly fascinating about this area of HCM, right? This sort of corner of HCM, is that a human, this particular person, this woman did notice this. She sort of she caught this, right? That this person was had all the on paper looked great, but met them, just didn't have those human skills. And I love that, the human skills. And I can only imagine. Now, what's funny though is, not in this particular instance, but in many instances across all of industry in talent acquisition, right? All sorts of people like that get through the filters and get hired. They don't have the human skills, and it's because it's humans making the decision making based on their, on what they think is right for the role versus what is actually right for the role.
Well, okay, you're right. So let's break that down a little bit, because think about what happened. That individual made it through the application process, was probably screened by one of this individual's recruitment team, right? At least one screening. This individual got to basically the senior VP of HR. Okay. So think about all the people that had to be touched before this critical role got to that position, at which time she identified how big an issue this is. So there was a lot of time cost wasted of the organization as well as the individual, let alone had they hired them, the knock-on effect of 1 month in this case. She said, I think it would have started to show itself in 2 weeks. That's what she said. So then if they had the courage to do what so many of us don't do well, which is to move the person out of the business, most of us sit on our hands. After 4 weeks, we know it's not right. 3 months later, we go, oh, I really got to do something about that. All of a sudden, it's a year on when we still have a culture pirate in the business. I mean, this is broadly, that happens a lot. Some of us don't do that, some of us do. But the knock-on cost, I mean, if you just think that through, the knock-on cost and just hard cost in bringing them in and not weeding them out earlier, because somebody had a biased view that those quals overrode everything without considering the human aspect.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the thing that's interesting about that is that too is those costs, they accumulate. It's like a snowball, right? So if you stop it right at the initial screening interview, right, then that's great, because you've only wasted maybe 15 to 20 minutes of time, right? Well, excuse me, not including the time it took to source that person, right? But then as it goes along, right, you're wasting more and more time, and then okay, then you can think of, okay, from date of hire to date of departure, all right, you can go straight from date of hire. You can skip all that part where they were actually employed by you. Just go to date of departure, and then you can calculate in, for instance, SHRM's, it's 90% to 200% of employees' annual pay to replace them. That's the cost, right? It's for a high level coder like that, might be in the 170% range or higher, right? Okay.
Yes. Not the impact of productivity of other people, because he had someone people were wanting to go home at, they were watching the clock at 4:30 to get out of the office, or to shut down their Zoom. But maybe so because we've talked about this, and I know that there are people who probably didn't see the first episode, if we just acknowledge that human skills, transferable skills, human capabilities are important, maybe we talk a little bit about, well, how might AI and tech in different parts of today address that use case that we're just talking about, and what are some of the concerns that we're seeing? Because I'd go back to, a few years ago, AWS came out with or Amazon came out with this AI tech that started basically the technology started building in biases, that it had. And because AI is a black box, this thing's just running. I mean, and if you follow Musk at all, Musk is all about AI is one of the most dangerous things this globe faces. So I think there's a really there's a set of is it morals? That's not the right word, but we're facing what is it? Ethics.
It's an ethical dilemma.
Yeah, there's a real ethical dilemma that's coming with AI, and I'm all for it. But what was it? Probably 4 years ago, Sumser and I, John Sumser and I was on a podcast of his in San Francisco, and he goes, Mike, are you guys using AI? Because everybody back then was saying, oh, we're AI this, AI that. All the HR tech was, right? I go, John, man, I haven't even gone near AI. I'm not going to touch it until I have an evidence base that I know, based on the best research, is rock solid, right? And then once we have that, then that gives me a governor against letting an AI, letting AI sort of start using that as a data source, because I know a reference point is of high quality. That's the risk that I see in this, is that when you create a black box and it starts going out and making its own decisions, and that is the risk of AI. The pace of decision making, the way decisions are made, it will come up. I mean, there's all sorts of books on this. I'm trying to read a bunch of them right now, but it can come up with solutions absence of ethics.
Yeah. And one of the concerns is, and I know John Sumser, and it's so funny you mentioned his podcast. I was about to mention John Sumser and the research he's done into AI with the HR Examiner and all of that. It's really great stuff.
Really.
Yeah. And one of the concerns is around, the development of the AI and who's developing the AI and their biases, their inherent, but that they're unaware of. It's not that they're being mean or they're purposely, doing the wrong things. It's just, they do what they know, right? And so now maybe you could help us understand a little bit around that, because to my mind, let me just sort of my position, or not my position, but my thesis or my developing hypothesis or whatever it is
Does it deal with Maslow's hierarchy?
No, we can talk about that later then. This idea that so we talked about this, applying the psychometrics to this dilemma first, not to the hiring dilemma, to the talent acquisition, to the idea, to the dilemma of how do I bring the right people into my organization? How do I understand what my organization is on the inside, so I can bring the right people in who are going to fit in that way, not just the people who know how to do what I need done, right? So there's a psychometrics piece of it, which is part and parcel of AbilityMap, right? But then, and tell me if I'm wrong on that. But then what are they doing? What are some examples of what they're doing with AI right now that's sort of ignoring sound psychometrics and could be, sort of derailing this very a diligent, assiduous process to do it right with psychometrics first, and then developing enough data, and then setting loose the AI on that. Am I making any sense?
I think so. Let's start going down it for a second. So first off, have you read Homo Deus by chance?
No, I have not. I gotta write that down.
Homo Deus, the first book is called Sapiens, and Sapiens is a history of humanity. And then Homo Deus means God man, right? God human. Mm-hmm. And it talks about our humanity's pursuit of eternal life. And actually, you'll like it because it actually ties back to Maslow a little bit. Anyway, but the last chapter is about essentially algorithms and our abdication of decision responsibility to algorithms and what that means. Okay. And I think that what I'm sort of coming to view is that if you accept the fact that AI is able to, and advanced computation as well, can process more data, look at all the different permutations and make it with the absence of human emotion and bias, that it will be better. They will be better decisions, which I fundamentally agree. If you ever read Ray Dalio's stuff, Principles?
Yeah, I've read some of that. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the same type thing, right? He did it for markets, mm-hmm. And he said, I have to get outside my emotion, and it makes better decisions. He still uses his emotion. That's the part that I think is critical, is that we have to control that we are emotional human beings, and that our emotion determines emotional state determines how we behave in an environment. We're humans, we're not machines, right? Yeah. So the thing that I find so fascinating about the value of psychometrics is when we measure Brent's inherent level of capability, it's based on your behavioral preferences. Okay? a good portion of our framework has behavioral capabilities, behavioral attributes and preferences underlying our capabilities. That's sort of what we do. But what that means is it identifies what aggregations of behaviors does Brett have a preference for, which means he probably pulls from it a lot, right? And he's probably pretty good at it. If you have a low preference for the aggregated behaviors that make up a capability, that means you don't dig it, right?
Right.
Okay. So at that foundational level, we're getting into Brett's psyche. Okay. Now, that reference point is not part of, at least I don't have confidence in turning that responsibility over to a machine to start from the ground up and to formulate Brett's preference. What we chose to do was to go out and look at the absolute best research available, identify how do we predict at the highest level Brett's inherent level of proficiency across different capabilities. And there's a whole bunch of our secret sauce in there, but it's not in an AI box. We did it, okay? We tested it. We know what it is. And I just believe that the ethical piece of recognizing the emotive nature of humans to either want to do or dig doing is such a critical element to us working together in an environment. If we don't have a foundation in that, which I personally haven't seen enough evidence to show me that that important aspect of humanity is being properly considered, I think we're at risk of making inconsiderate, unemotive considered potentially unethical in the human context, not in the AI context. They don't care. It's a zero-sum game, right? But that's not the way we operate. That's not the way we want to live. At least I don't. Well, so does that help?
Yeah, it does. If we don't do this, what you're describing, if we don't do what you're describing, we're going to be in perpetually more and more increasingly in perpetually combative relationship with AI. And it's going to I hate to invoke a popular movie, but it could end up looking like the Terminator. I mean, not to be too cute about it, but we could very well, we want to be in a reciprocal positive loop of a relationship with AI. And the way to do that is to start in the right place. If we don't start in the right place, we may very well not have an opportunity to reset.
I agree. So check this out. This is kind of interesting. This is a line of thought I'm on lately, all right? So if we accept that because of the advanced power of computers, that complex decisions, more data, more permutations can be done faster than the human brain can. We're just about at that point, recognizing that there are some aspects that still aren't there. But at the end of the day, what we're saying is those aspects that aren't there are the things we care about as human. If you're just looking at a decision-making process and you recognize that a non-emotive system can, sure, we can try to program it to have human considerations, but if you just let it go, it's going to be black or white. It's a Borg, right? It's a Borg. Okay.
Yeah, the Borg. Yep.
Right. Now, what I find pretty fascinating is two things. One, if I say this right, corporations a while back were essentially given equal status as people, more or less. In the eye of the government. So what that means is a corporation's an entity. A corporation can be sued. It has responsibilities. It can be taken to court, just like a person can. Okay. So when we did that, we essentially said, okay, well, humans are responsible, but now we've got corporations are responsible.
Yeah.
How big a step do you think it is before we start giving an set of algorithms the equal status of corporations and people?
That's a really good point. Probably sooner than later, right?
Probably. Well, and actually, I read one of the books I was reading, there's actually an algorithm that has been appointed to a board of a VC company. I think it might be in South Korea.
An algorithm was appointed to the board of a company, to the
As a
board.
director.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, it's probably right around the corner. One thing that's interesting to me, and I hope this doesn't sound too far out to our listeners, but it really dawned on me. I was pulling in onto my road the other day after leaving my daughters off at daycare, and it occurred to me, okay, so often we hear somebody, myself even, I caught myself, saying, oh yeah, AI, sort of trust the AI, or the AI will do that, right? The AI will figure that out. And, and I realized that I was trusting the algorithm, right? And whatever else the AI
Yeah,
is.
ways.
And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, sometimes, sometimes I'm, going about my day and I have faith in, the greater universe that something good will happen, or like the right thing will happen, right? And then it occurred to me, wait a minute, am I looking at, and I'm certainly not the only person, are we looking at AI almost as a deity, right? And that, and so, I mean, okay, I've seen headlines about the AI God or whatever, and all these sorts of things, and then I went down this rabbit hole that it was a real daymare that I won't share with everybody here, but
Daymare.
yeah, that's a nightmare that happens during the day. It's the opposite of
I
a
like that.
but I mean, that goes right to, so, but we have the ability right now, at least I think so, it seems to me, based on what I'm hearing from you and others, is that we have this ability right now to since we're going in that direction, and at some point we are going to rely on the AI to figure stuff out that we don't know, right? We're going to want it to figure out things in the way that would be beneficial to mankind, right? To humankind, right?
Yeah.
We have the opportunity right now to ensure that, but we could miss. I guess I'm saying what I said previously just a moment ago, but in a different way. We could miss the boat on that.
Well, I did not expect to be having a matrix conversation. So I hope we're not boring the hell out of your listeners.
I don't think so.
Okay, I think that humanity is always searching. And we always have. I mean, if you go back and look at history, it was about expansion. It was, that's what we do. We're a virus, okay? We're a plague, and we always consume and grow. And everyone has different views on that. It is what it is. If you go back to the metaphor, or whatever you want to call it, of people, corporations, and particularly algorithms being recognized as equal entities, right? Mm-hmm. And you recognize that even with what you just said, already you and I, me with ways, you with what you were describing, are abdicating decision authority to an algorithm that may not have equal entity to us yet. And if we accept that algorithms most likely make better decisions than corporations and people, and that's going to continue to increase, then that situation right there means that we're abdicating, in some cases to corporations, but more and more to algorithms. Mm-hmm. That's a risk. And I'll tell you why. It's really interesting. If we go back and look at our data, just in aggregate, that we've collected, we measure critical thinking, abstract reasoning as part of our evaluation. And the percentage of the population that is highly capable has, and this is a cognitive measure, this is not a behavioral measure, the percentage of the population that is highly capable across critical thinking, abstract reasoning is pretty small. Okay. Now we're talking like 18%. All right.
Yeah.
So what that means is 18% of the population is able to find themselves in an unfamiliar situation, evaluate what that means, what are the potential impacts and implications, and make a decision that is correct as to how to move forward in it.
Yeah.
Okay. That means that 82% of our population is less than capable. All right. Now that's okay. You don't need to be Einstein.
Right.
Less than highly capable. There's about 26%, I think it is, that are capable.
Okay.
Okay. The rest are average and development need.
Okay.
Now, the development need by memory is about 30%. Now, what that means, those are the individuals that can't critically think. If Siri tells them to jump off a bridge, they'll consider it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I think so. Let's get back to HR tech. I feel that we have a personal responsibility to figure out how to maintain human ethics at the forefront of work.
Yeah.
Okay. Whether it's government, whether it's not for profit, whether it's whatever, right? Yeah. Or for profit, it doesn't matter. And I think if we don't understand what that is, what that looks like, how we define it in the environment that we need and want, then, and we can't evaluate individuals across those same criteria, then I think we're missing that opportunity that you're referencing.
Indeed. Indeed. And you know, and to bring it back to HCM and HR tech even more, right? There's this idea that, you know, I think humans need to sort of reserve for themselves their place in the world of work, right? So if we have, you know, if we do this right, then we won't have AI that essentially decides, well, you know what? Let's replace this role with a machine, right? Whenever a certain set of criteria aren't met. You know, I was having conversation with another fellow. Actually, is our principal analyst who covers finance, around the idea of how much we pay, say, fast food employees or high school employees. And you know, there's a school of thought that says, well, they're high school kids, you know, they're going to, you know, they should work for less, you know, and yada yada yada. And there's a rationale behind that. But then I guess there's a study out there, and I don't know who did it, but apparently there's a study out there that said if it was a restaurant that paid its high school employees $1 more per hour, and they actually performed better as an organization in terms of profits and all these other metrics. So it's interesting. So, you know, you could have an AI, right, that would look at, you know, the cost. It might just consider talent acquisition in terms of a cost of the employee versus, you know, the general ledger or whatever, and saying, okay, well, maybe we should just have a machine do A, B, or C, right? Without necessarily considering that, what if we hired high school students at $1 more per hour, we might actually achieve X, Y, and Z. That could be a scenario.
Yeah, and that, I mean, those are you know, well, and again, it's, you say, you know, in this discussion topic where you're saying that the company made more profit than others that didn't. So from a profit standpoint, that comes out. There comes a point where which is a very controversial subject, but is profit our ultimate motive? Right. Right? I mean, you know, excuse me. I mean, I'm in a company that's a, you know, early stage, high growth company, and I'll guarantee you my shareholders think about, you know, making money, as do I.
Yep.
But, you know, the thing that we think about here and it's because of the space we're in, is think about it this way. If we, which we do, we define the capabilities that support our vision, values, and purpose. So that's our culture, right? We think about the capabilities that are necessary to be effective in our growing company, okay? We also think about what are the capabilities necessary to be effective in the fact that we're working remotely. We measure that, okay? And we measure ourselves, the people we're looking to hire, everything against our culture, and whether they can work effectively in an isolated environment, because this is going to go up and down for a while. We also measure it against the requirements of a specific job, because different jobs have different types of transferable human skills needed to do that, all right? The basic premise is that if you know what that is, and if I go back to our discussion about what are psychometrics, or at least how we use psychometrics, the psychometrics don't do what we do, right? They measure behavior. The key thing is to aggregate them into what people do. That's part of what we've done. But if you, the key to this is, if you've been on a team, in a company, in a family, where the foundation of what it's about, you know what it is, and everybody's buying into it. In other words, they have a preference for that. They dig doing it, and they're good doing it. Yeah. Those are the teams that nobody can stop.
Right.
Right. And that requires that the human element be considered. Yeah. And it be known both in terms of what's required in the environment and what does the individual bring to the table. And that determination, I mean, I go back to when Kev and I first started the company, because I come from San Francisco, I come from tech. I'm like, Kev, let's scrape Facebook, let's scrape LinkedIn, you know, we can get all this great data, you know, blah, blah, blah. And that's when Sumser and I had that conversation. He goes, Mike, it's zero time assessment. I go, John, I don't think we're ready for zero time assessment, pulling it off the web and stuff. You know, it's not, I don't think we're there yet. We're going back to foundational evidence, right? And we had this back and forth, and we haven't talked in a while. I'd love to talk with him again. But the point is that if you figure that out, and then you can incorporate that in AI, but you bring people in who have the ethical integrity, are bought into the vision of what we're talking about altruistically, a positive environment. Well, that's a pretty good place. Now, the world does not operate that way, but there are companies, there are people that, you know, always champion that, and that's where we're at. I don't know how to say it any way else, but you know, that's what we're into.
Well, that's the thing, is that, you know, it goes back to employer culture, having a positive employer culture. If you have a positive employer culture, and you have, which you know, you have a sense of trust, a sense of belonging, but you also have people who dig what they're doing, working together, who have been, you know, have been evaluated as people with behavioral traits that work well in concert together, right? Those are the organizations, and there's research to back this up. I can't cite any of it off the top of my head, but it's, you know, from universities, that proves that these are the organizations that perform best, i.e. make the best profit. So that's the thing about it, is that which is so exciting and frankly encouraging, is this idea that, yeah, there's a big debate over what are we in business for, you know, is it ultimately to make a profit or something more? And that's an interesting conversation to have. And there are people that take sides on that, but really, if you think about it, not to bring it all the way back to abstract and concrete HCM, but it doesn't matter, in my opinion, because the best organizations, the best performing organizations, the organizations that make the best profit, are going to be much more likely than not the organizations that have the most positive culture.
It's funny, mate. One of the things that we did is, my partner's like a golf tragic, right? So halfway through COVID, you know, like, it was tough, right? Because originally our product was oriented toward predominantly recruitment. And then we moved to, we were developed through the first half of COVID, kept going for our vision, which is basically full human capital management planning, seeing what you're actually working with from capability, because that then can then inform acquisition, development, performance support, and mobility. So that's what we did. But what Kev did in the middle was he went out and he basically talked to a bunch of professional golf coaches, and he developed a high performance elite golfer profile. And we started selling that to golfers, because the neuromechanics are what matter in golf, right?
Okay.
If you have a great swing, that's fine. But if you can't calm your mind or focus or set goals or set a strategy, it's the human skills that actually make the difference between a really good golfer and not. So we do a profile against that. But my reason for saying that is this. You're talking about workforces, and for some reason we have a difficult time thinking about, well, boy, yeah, that makes sense that if we have people that we know what we need done and we get people who dig doing that, that should mean that we're more successful. For some reason, the business context, we don't actually get that as much, right? All you got to do is look at US women's soccer.
Yeah.
Okay. Those ladies are a united team. Look at the All Blacks. Mm-hmm. They are a united team, right? Mm-hmm. They've got a complement of human transferable skills on that team that they know how to tick together, and they love doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. In sport, you can see it. It makes sense. In business, it becomes more abstract, but it's the same principle.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it goes back to this idea also that, I think that there's an opportunity today at this juncture, right? And it's pressing actually right now that we do, but there's also an opportunity to understand that, the financial leaderships and accounting's view of the organization. By that I don't mean sort of their opinion of the organization, but just their view of it, how they look at the organization. It's important. It is important, but it is not the full view.
Yeah, it's what causes, like one of our best clients right now is a CFO. He's a really cool dude, and he gets this stuff. He's championed it all the way across the business, the CEO. He just called me yesterday and he goes, Mike, we're reporting up to global. And one of the initiatives is to de-bias recruitment. And he said, I'm so proud to say I'm sending them up this thing on what we've been doing with AbilityMap over the last 7 months. We've already de-biased recruitment. And I go, good on you, mate.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, there are leaders in finance in the CFO position that are in the role of CFO who sort of, they're on the bleeding edge. They're expanding their vision, and those are the people that's super important, because there's an opportunity to expand the consciousness, without sounding too corny, of the organization. I think it's like, if you're judging your organization's success, well, if you are making decisions on what to do next in the organization based solely on accounting's view or the financial leadership's view, of the conventional financial leader's view, right? It's kind of like driving 90 miles per hour at night with your high beams on. Technically, you're driving blind, because you won't be able to stop in time if a deer comes out in front of you just beyond the reach of your headlights.
All you gotta do is run through a fog bank and you're in trouble.
Exactly. Yeah. This has been, yeah.
That's really good, mate. I didn't expect this conversation. I never know what to expect when I get with you, and I kind of dig that.
I didn't expect it either.
Yeah, I hope your listeners get value. As we said last time, this was a trip of a conversation, but I think what's, let me just take it back. I think, abstract concrete HR is, I bought into that concept when you introduced it to me. And it ties, as we said, to the yin and the yang of what we're about, right? And I think we've touched on it again, interestingly, in that there is a human component that has not been able to be effectively defined, measured, and compared, that really matters. it really matters. I mean, it matters. And it matters even more because we're getting to the point where we're creating decision capabilities through advanced computing and AI. And as humans, we have a broad propensity to abdicate decision authority to those. And if we don't get particularly leaders, but more people who are able to behave and operate in line with human ethics, you know, it could get ugly.
Yeah, yeah. I beautifully stated. Thank you so much for joining us, Mike. This has been fantastic. Um, I have to get to baby watching now, so that's otherwise we
Well,
could continue speaking. Um,
yeah.
yeah, till next time, and maybe one of these days we'll be able to have a beer down under.
Mate, I would absolutely adore that. We'll go for a walk in the bush and we'll have a look. It's really good to see you, Brent. All my
Awesome.
best.
Take care, Mike.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, mate. Bye-bye.